And now let me introduce you our next speaker. It's Dr. Yogesh Girdhar. He is principal investigator of the WARP lab at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and they focus on applied ocean physics and engineering. His talk will be titled Scaling Up Reef Ecosystem Monitoring Using Underwater Robots. So please welcome Dr. Girdhar.
Does this not work?
Yes, well,
The first one. Yeah. No. Let's run it again. Yeah, then. I can do it. Yeah. Right. Well, I'll try to make my talk a little bit shorter, try to catch up. I hope you're not expecting me to finish in the next 8 minutes. But I'll try to, yeah. So yeah, thank you everybody for sticking around. And today is the list of talks that was great. And actually, I was most excited by Professor Bremen's talk in the morning, because they kind of laid down kind of the needs of the reef monitoring, and I thought that was like a perfect. I wish my talk was just right after that talk, and it would have been perfect, because I'll try to. My goal is to try to make Professor Bremen happy. That's, if I can do that, it'll be a good day. So. I come from. My name is Yogi Girdhar. I run a lab called WARP Lab at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and we are trying to build reef monitoring systems, but kind of go the next extra step of like how can we scale them up and how can we monitor them in more interesting and creative ways through the use of robotics and AI beyond like the obvious trivial ways of how we've been doing up till now, right? So I'll start my my talk by just showing you the work I did as a grad student. So this is an example of a curious robot which I implemented, and it uses unsupervised learning to try to understand the world. Right? It's kind of taken in like data continuously. It has no prior data sets or model. It's training a model of an appearance model of the world on the fly, and then it's looking for information that is new in that world that it cannot explain, that is least explainable given all the data you have seen up till now and all the model you have trained up till now from all the data, right? So it's trying to improve its it's trying to build a generative model, using that to predict what it's supposed to see in its current view. And the red dot here is like the part of the world which makes least sense, and it tries to do data collection on that world. So this was interesting, but in some ways, when I come to WHOI, like my interest has been kind of talking to all the biologists and ecologists. I found like you need to sort of tame this beast to make it useful, right? And that is essentially what I've been trying to do for the last 8 years at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. So we've been working on this. I wanted to only work on the software, but the software which I wanted to build, there was no robot which existed that could run that the software. So we ended up building this robot. This is we call it CUREE, Curious Underwater Robot for Ecosystem Exploration, and designed for bottom up. For it's small, it fits in a checked-in luggage, and it's got a lot of computing power. So you can take all your acoustics and visual data, passive acoustics and visual data, process them on the fly, and it's kind of suitable for adaptive sampling tasks, both using visual observation and passive acoustic observation. And the goal is rely only on these low-cost sensors and make the hardware as simple as possible, put in all the effort on the software so that you can actually scale up. And down the line, if you want to build many of these robots, it should actually not be expensive, because all the money is going basically into the software development. right? So it's pretty good at kind of finding its way around the reef, and it's small, it's easily deployable by one person. And what I'm going to show you by next of the rest of my slides is some of the things we are doing to observe the benthic part of the ocean, the benthic substrate types. What are we doing to understand the fish and the animal life in a reef? And then finally, can we come up with like, how can we sort of extend it to kind of understand the whole ecosystem? And some beginning steps we are taking towards that. So to begin with, so the robot, it can kind of it can do surveys. That's pretty simple thing. A lot of robots we expect to do, they are able to do, and it can produce these 3D mosaics. That is also pretty well established technology. There's nothing new on that front. So the cool thing is it can actually, compared to a diver, it's like, order of magnitude or probably more efficient in terms of time, kind of building these, collecting data for these mosaics. So what's interesting though is we have been, anybody who's taken images underwater, and I understand like, the problem of how images are distorted, right? And so images are distorted basically due to backscatter and effects of attenuation. So to survey capabilities, we realized early on that we kind of need to solve this problem. So there has been a few years ago, there was work by Dr. Akayanak, I forgot, Daria was her first name. I forgot her last name, Akayanak. So she proposed this see-through color, see-through model for the underwater imagery. And it kind of modeled the backscatter and attenuation using a physics-based model. And then there's a way so you can compute those parameters, except the fact that it was so slow, it can take like 5 minutes to process an image, like an HD image. So, but what we have been doing here at Woods Hole Oceanographic is, so my student Stuart, he came up with a deep learning-based model, which works on the stream of data. We can estimate the depth of the image. One other thing we need to make this work is we need to understand how deep certain things is. So we can estimate the depth of an image, and from that we can, in real time, we train a neural network to extract the parameters of the backscatter and the parameters for the attenuation, and we can do this sort of removal, image correction in real time. And that's useful for if you want to do adaptive color correction and build these 3D constructions, which are much more beautiful and colorful than what you would get from generic imagery. Especially though you don't need to use a flash, artificial lighting. You can just do a survey and get pretty good performance. We can also, we have been working on real-time benthic substrate characterization. So this is, we have been using, it uses a Bayesian non-parametric model combined with some deep learning-based features to essentially identify which parts of the reefs are similar looking. And it builds a model of different appearance model for different types of substrate types. It looks at the reef. And again, like similar to how the first demo was, it's building that model on the fly, training it on the fly, and kind of doing this on the fly. So basically that means that you can put it anywhere in the any part of the world. It doesn't have to be coral reefs, and right away you give the robot this understanding of, is it on a new type of environment or a different type of environment? You can do adaptive sort of data collection tasks very easily, and you can build up a lot of adaptive sampling AI on top of it. So and you can have that work over low bandwidth communication channels. So even if you have acoustic comm links, very quickly you can tell the robot, hey, pay attention to this part of the environment because you have this high level representation. Our robots also have ears. So the way that happens is we have 4 hydrophones on our robot. But hydrophones, you can't listen to them when the motor is on. So what we do is, as the robot is doing its surveys, it turns everything off, and it drifts for some time, and then it listens to the reef. And what does it listen to? So I work with my colleagues Aaron Mooney and Seth McCammon at Woods Hole, and so Aaron Mooney is a bioacousticians, and there are a lot of like fish which make sound. They're snapping shrimp, we all know, like are very noisy underwater. But our goal is to kind of be able to, if we listen to the reef, then we can target our data. We can identify which parts of the reef are very active, are hotspots for marine life, and we can sort of detect them and identify them from far away and like home our robots towards those areas so we can observe them with high resolution if needed. And because our robot observes visually and acoustically, it can do surveys at the same time. We can do some, we can very quickly use it to kind of, we can be creative with our robot and the data it collects. So an example of that is, so in our survey, here the top plot, this is the plot where x-axis is time of a survey, and the top plot is showing, you know, the dotted line is the this dotted line is the plot of how much snapping, how many snaps you're hearing from a snapping shrimp, how many snap density. And so these are like the parts where you're listening to these bars are when you are actually listening to the reef, because other parts the motor is on. And in this plot, you're seeing, again, using that unsupervised Benthic characterization algorithm running, you can easily detect anytime you see this blue spot, which is computed automatically, that corresponds to when you are on top of a reef, and all these other purple and light green areas, those are the sandy spots. So everything is computed automatically, and we can quickly establish like strong correlations between where the snapping shrimp lives, and it's easy to do these type of hypotheses, kind of evaluate these type of hypotheses. This is known, but this is an example of how quickly we can sort of evaluate ecological hypotheses using the techniques I'm proposing. We are not only observing, so benthic coral reefs, which don't move, is like one part of the equation, but there's also other inhabitants on a reef, more specifically they're fish. So we all, oftentimes when we do diver surveys to quantify how much fish there is, you would see that this thing is going to loop a few times, but as soon as you see a lot of fish, but as soon as the diver comes, all the fish hide behind the rocks. And basically, oftentimes when you're doing diver surveys, they're basically to show that there's a huge amount of bias, you know, whenever you're doing divers to do the surveys. And the question is, can we do better with robots or not? So we've been, but before that, like, what can we do with the robots, right? So my lab is kind of starting to look at this question: how can we quantify fish abundance on a reef? And so one simple sort of trivial approach what we're doing is we have built like this fish detector. And at the moment, we are not doing species level things. Just detecting fish actually is a very, very complicated problem. So my student Vivi, who's here, he's one of the persons involved with leading this effort. And so he took all the publicly available annotated data sets which you could find on the internet to train a detector. And he calls it the mega fish detector. And it's available actually for anybody to use. It was just released a few days ago, and it's available for all to use. And we trained a fish detector, and then so that's good. It's kind of works, but it's not perfect. We have some ideas on improving it. But assuming it works, what we can do is we can take our survey data. We can, and this is an example of our robot's trajectory, and the heat plot here shows the amount of fish that was detected during our survey. And this is an example where we see this spot very obviously sort of highlighted, and that actually spot is a part where there's a nice big dendrogyra and there's an overhang, and so it kind of matches our sort of hypothesis pretty well that, you know, fish like to live in places where they could hide, and there's a lot of structure, and it matches well with the rugosity. So this is the highest rugosity region on the reef, which we also computed, but I'm not showing that. And we can actually easily sort of observe it. And the idea here is, you know, identifying these hotspots allows us to, if you are doing restoration or something, we know this spot is important. You know, if you're going to do any restoration, just spend extra attention to these spots. Identifying these spots is critical, and before you do anything else, please protect these first, and then worry about other else. So it helps us prioritize our resources. We are also, the previous lecture was kind of good, like, monitoring animal behavior is interesting and useful. And so one of the things we wanted to do was we're working with Roger Hanlon, who does a lot of this octopus, studies a lot of octopus at Marine Biology Lab in Woods Hole. And him and many other scientists are just interested in different understanding behavior of different animals and how they interact in their ecosystem. And there are a lot of implications of questions like that, because observing these animals, and if you can understand their changes in their behavior, then we know that there's something happening in the ecosystem, right? So there's an indirect way of kind of observing the ecosystem. So what we've been doing, this again work done by my student Levi Kai. We first collected a huge data set. It does not exist. By huge, I mean, I think 30, 40 clips of camera or robot collected data set where the camera is moving, following of animal. So, and we use that data set to identify algorithms and parameters for the algorithms that are most well suited for underwater tracking tasks. And so we focused on semi-supervised algorithms. So these algorithms do not require you to train on a specific animal. So and basically they, given an initial sort of bounding box, they learn the visual appearance of the model on the fly. So as they're tracking the animal, they are building an appearance model and using that appearance model to track. So the cool thing is they're much more robust compared to simple algorithms like blob tracking based things when the background is complicated, like coral reefs, and they almost work, and in some cases better than animal specific trained algorithms, because they basically are training themselves on the fly. So what we did was we identified these, we use the semi-supervised algorithm, and then we want to use them to observe animals in the field. So here is an example of us following this barracuda. So this barracuda, barracudas are top apex predators, and observing them and their behavior. So you see a turtle here, understanding how they interact with other animals, what their territory is, what their range is, how much energy they are spending every day. If they are all of a sudden, if we can collect data, which allows us to make the inference that, hey, these barracudas are much more stressed all of a sudden, then we know something is wrong in the ecosystem. Something is wrong, like all their downstream, things are changing. So it's a very simple way to kind of quantify the health of the entire ecosystem. So in this example, we track this barracuda is being tracked by a robot using that semi-supervised approach, and we see it basically going through this world, checking out different kind of terrains, going over. So this is, we started off from a part of the reef which we know, but then it took us for a ride and went to this fringe reefs which we have never explored, and we see it actually. It's kind of cool. At one point, it goes and at that point, see, it goes and scares away this other fish from its territory, and then it turns around. So turns around and it backtracks. So because we are following with the robot, we can actually we know exactly where it's going. And eventually in this journey, it comes back exactly to the same spot where it started from after like a whole bunch of minutes. After, like, this is the reef where it started from, where we and this is the area where it started from. So it comes back, it takes a long loop around the reef to a neighboring fringe reef and comes back to where it started from, and which we thought was kind of very cool, right? So we can actually map it, and this was this map, and this is the this little backtracking. That is the part where it went to scare away that other animal from its territory, So the thing which I'm trying to say is, because we are mapping its motion around the world, we can quantify its behavior, and we can collect data set which can be used to quantify its behavior in interesting ways, which till now has not been possible. And it basically, it opens up it gives us a new tool to marine ecologists to study these ecosystems, something which till now has been extremely difficult to do. We can do that for bigger animals or extremely small animals like zebrafish, but nothing in situ in the world, right? So finally, I want to show this other idea. Like, so we can observe different types of animals. We can we can do all these surveys, but really our goal is, can we make I think the future which I envision is, we need to build a generative model of a coral reef ecosystem, right? So a probabilistic generative model of a coral reef ecosystem, something which you can use then to make predictions into the future or in space, and sort of and put in simulate different effects of different interventions and understand how that might unfold. Allows you kind of do this unrolling of hey, if I do this intervention, how will things unroll into the future or in space, right? So, and can we build a model like that? And so to this end, currently it's hard to for us to do, because there are observation of different animals and substrate types and coral types is kind of a little bit hard, but I still have been craving to sort of build those tools. So as a temporary, so to develop these algorithms, what I've been working on is, instead of coral reef animals, I've been working with phytoplankton imagery, right? So I worked with, this is work I do with Heidi Sosek for phytoplankton imagery, and my student Johnson Susi. And so imagine if you have an imaging system like the IFCB, which can take lots of images of phytoplankton in real time. And then we have a neural network which can, I think we have a neural network which can detect 200 different types of phytoplankton in real time. And we can, and this is like the density of those for each one of those samples. So each one of these points is a sample the ship is going, and it's collecting. Every point corresponds to a vertical line here, right? Just showing the distribution of phytoplankton over time. So that's our observation. But what we really want to do is be able to predict, given an observation at a particular point, given if I stop it, at a particular, given all these observations up to now, I want to make predictions everywhere else of how the phytoplankton, how the animal might be distributed everywhere else. So what can we do? So this is something you can do easily if your observations are low dimensional and scalar, right? So when you're talking about chlorophyll density or temperature or salinity, they are very well developed tools to be able to do that. We can use Gaussian processes or similar techniques to be able to kind of make those predictions. And then we have tools for planning the robot's path to kind of detect hotspots. They're all very well developed tools, but they don't work when you have 200 different animal types and you try, and they are sparsely distributed in space and time, right? So my lab has been working on this technique called Gaussian Dirichlet random fields, and basically to try to make these, it's a generative model of a community structure of animals. So it's trying to make predictions at different locations, but not by just simply extrapolating based on where you are, but it actually looks at what kind of animals like to co-occur in space and time, and use that to kind of build a model. And then even if you don't see that animal, you can actually expect that animal to be there. If I don't see, like, if I don't see you, but if I see your friends all around, I can see a lot of your friends, there's a good chance you are probably around, right? So kind of use these type of co-occurrence model, modeling them as Dirichlet distributions to do that. So what I'm showing here is, I'm just wrapping it up. So this part is observed, right? This part of what we have observed, like distribution of phytoplankton over time. And this is prediction at all these unobserved locations, right? And so right now you see it's pretty bad because it's only made a few predictions, a few observations. And but what you see is over time, as we make more observations, it's slowly learning the structure of the world and co-occurrence relationships between animals. And then it can kind of work with both the spatial correlations and co-occurrence structure between observation of different animals to make better and better predictions, and it gets better and better over time. So this is an important tool for us to make adaptive robot sampling techniques which can work at animal level, like even rare animals, right? So if you want to target a rare animal in the reef, like we can, this is the type of tool you need to be able to do that. So with that, I'll end my talk. And so these are all the work I showed here was done by my students. And Vivi's here. Actually, he has a poster. Vivi's Levi Kai. He's here. He's going to show his poster on animal tracking. So I recommend, if you have questions, check out. And this is our lab's website, and everything which I like to show and not tell. So I didn't go into a lot of technical details of how things should be or what they are. So I like to just show the results. But if you want the details, a lot of them are papers, or on each slide is like a paper or maybe more, and you can find them on our website. All right, thank you.